I worked at a haunted gas station in Arizona. The list of rules was just the beginning of my terror. I never should have opened that door. Darkness hung thick around me as I stepped into my first shift at the gas station on Route 66. It was supposed to be just another mind-numbing job, but everything changed when I got the list of rules. "Follow them, or else," the manager had said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. I felt a shiver creep down my spine. The station was dim, flickering fluorescent lights barely illuminating the chipped linoleum floor and the aged counter. The smell of stale gas mixed with something rotten lingered in the air, clawing at my throat. I rubbed my arms against the chill, wishing for warmth. Outside, the wind howled, creating whispers that danced around the corners of my mind. I glanced at the eerie shadows that moved in the darkened aisles. It felt like I wasn't alone, that I started the shift like any other. Customers came and went, faces blurred by the flicker of the neon signage. But it wasn't long before the atmosphere shifted. The quiet was broken by unsettling noises. A hum, like the static on the radio, swirled around me. Every so often, an object would scrape across the counter: an empty soda can, a dirty rag when no one was there to touch it. The customers didn't seem to notice. I could feel my heart racing, pounding against my chest like it was desperate to escape. The list of rules ran through my mind. Don't leave the front unattended. Don't go to the bathroom alone. Never ever look in the back room after midnight. But who would I be if I didn't test them? Curiosity compelled me. I pulled out my flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows like a pretend sword. Cold sweat glued my shirt to my back. The back room loomed beyond a swinging door, slightly ajar. A horrible chill seeped into the air like ice creeping up my spine. I took a breath and stepped toward the door. My chest tightened. It creaked open, revealing a maze of forgotten shelves and dusty equipment. The shadows loomed larger, shifting as if someone or something was waiting. I strained to hear, breath hitching as I caught faint whispers, just out of reach. "Help me." The hairs on my arms stood on end, a threatening voice curling around me as I stumbled back to the front. The lights flickered rapidly, a dance of flickers that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the back room, echoing off the walls. My heart dropped as I froze, staring at the door as the tension thickened. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Just then, the door swung wide open. A tall shadow loomed in the doorway, cloaked in darkness. I opened my mouth to scream but no sound emerged. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, shrouded in a shadow so deep it consumed all light. It moved with a predatory grace, a slither of darkness made flesh. I finally found my voice, but in that moment of panic, all I could emit was a series of stuttered gasps as I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a display of energy drinks. A sickly sweet odor invaded my senses, mingling with the scent of gasoline and something more putrid, creating a nauseating cocktail. That eye and the flickering light, the figure revealed itself slowly, the edges softening just enough to make out a face pale and gaunt, eyes hollow pits of darkness that seemed to drink in all light around it. Its mouth curled into a cruel smile, revealing too many teeth, each one like a shard of glass. "You shouldn't have looked," it rasped, voice slithering through the air like smoke. An echo of that wretched whisper seeped into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts. "You've broken the rules." Adrenaline surged through me, driving every ounce of rationality from my head. I spun around, desperation clawing at my throat. My feet propelled me forward as I tried to reach the front door. My breath came in ragged gasps, visions of the monster lurking behind me creeping into my consciousness. The gas station was a labyrinth, and I had become a trapped mouse in its darkened maze that I paused to glance over my shoulder. The shadow was closer now, stalking me with a terrible hunger. The fluorescent lights above buzzed and flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows in which the spectre seemed to multiply. My mind raced back to the rules. The words echoed through me, follow them, or else. What else awaited me if I didn't? Then I heard a low growl, rumbling from the depths of the darkness. Stay, and pay the price, the creature hissed. Panic swelled within me. I bolted toward the nearest aisle, shoving shelves aside, knocking over cans that scattered across the floor like marbles. I felt eyes on me, watching, lurking in the shadows, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. That I crashed into the bathroom door, yanking it open without a second thought. Closing the door behind me, I braced it with my back, chest heaving, the dark interior closing in around me. It was dim, and the air was thick with mildew. But I had to find safety. My only solace lay in the lock of the door, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the mechanism. With a deafening crash, something slammed against the door from the outside. I froze, heart racing as the wood creaked under the pressure. The whispers intensified, filling the cramped space, circling around me, an unending chorus of desperation. Help me, they echoed again, the voice familiar and chilling. My own. Or the lost souls trapped within the gas station's horrific grasp. Then, silenced that I held my breath, ears straining for any sound as the door quivered under the weight of whatever prowled outside. One moment stretched into eternity, and then the air shifted. A whisper brushed against my ear, cold enough to send icicles running down my spine. You can't hide. In a moment of primal instinct, I bolted toward the small window, willing it to open as the door began to buckle. Outside, the ominous sky was illuminated with flashes of angry clouds, reflecting the turmoil in my chest. Perhaps if I could escape through the window, break free from this nightmare, I could still save myself, but pushing against the glass revealed another horror. The flickering neon light danced across the pavement outside, beneath the watchful gaze of an entire sea of shadowy figures congregated by the gas pumps. They stood silent and still, their faces turned toward me, gazing with hollow stares, each one a distorted version of someone I might have known in life. Join us, they chanted, a haunting lullaby that filled my mind. The bathroom door buckled once more, and I turned just in time to see it splinter, the darkness beyond it seeping into the room like a living entity. My heart raced, and I made my choice. I flung myself through the window just as the door burst apart, scattering wood and threats across the floor, but as I hurtled through the opening, I felt a cold hand grip my ankle from behind its grasp like a vice. I screamed, clawing at the ground as I felt myself being pulled back into the abyss. The gas station's hungry embrace was relentless, a void that demanded my surrender. With a final, desperate kick, I broke free, tumbling into the night air. But as I landed on the ground, the world around me spun violently. The gas pumps flickered wildly, and the shadows loomed closer, their whispers now echoing inside my mind with a terrifying clarity, a dark intricacy that promised no escape. And then, in the harrowing night, I heard one final, chilling statement hung in the wind, a prophecy I couldn't comprehend. Next time, you won't run. It was coming for me. The night air was cool against my skin, a sharp contrast to the feverish heat of the gas station's interior. I scrambled to my feet, breathless and disoriented, my heart thundering like a war drum in my chest. I turned to look back at the shattered window, the crumbled edge like jagged teeth ready to consume me once more. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices lacing through the air, weaving strange patterns of dread. Panic surged through me, and I dove into the surrounding darkness, running blindly. The asphalt crunched underfoot, and I darted towards the flickering light of the nearby roadside. Hanging lamps cast long, distorted shadows, illuminating a path that felt impossibly treacherous. Yet, the solitary glow was my only lifeline. But even as I approached, I sensed the tangible weight of dread pressing down around me. The shadows by the gas pumps began to ripple, their forms shifting ominously, watching my flight with a malevolent patience. The air shimmered with unease, and I felt the terrible knowledge seeping back into my mind. The rules. How many had I broken by simply glancing into the dark? I stumbled toward the street, the distant roar of an approaching vehicle offering a glimmer of hope. But instinct whispered that I was not alone. I could feel the oppressive energy, the chill creeping along my spine, swirling with the wind. Each breath tasted of lingering decay, the smell so strong that appalling memories clawed at the edges of my mind. Faded faces etched in shadow and sorrow. As the headlights of an unseen vehicle illuminated the ominous tendrils reaching for me, I paused. I had to remember the warnings, the fear etched into the eyes of those who had come before me. The air shifted again, and all at once, the whispers consolidated into an urgent plea. Turn back. I froze, blood running cold. Behind me, something slithered through the shadows. The figure from the gas station emerged, its grin widening, teeth glinting malevolently under the sporadic light. You thought you could escape? It hissed, voice dripping with amusement. The headlights flickered once more, and suddenly the gas station's neon sign sparked to life, bathing everything in eerie hues of green and crimson. The vehicle I had hoped for came to a screeching halt. I turned, eyes wide, recognizing the logo on its side, a police cruiser. Relief surged within me, only for it to be shattered when the occupant stepped out. It wasn't a lawman. The figure that emerged was an unsettling replica of Officer Nelson, my neighbor, the one who went missing 3 weeks prior. His uniform hung loosely, as if he were a marionette with severed strings, and he walked with an unnatural jerky motion, eyes vacant as if they were merely hollow shells. Help me, he rasped, words slithering like tendrils through the night air, echoing with the whispers of the darkness. His gaze pinned me in place, and behind him, I caught the unsettling silhouette of another figure creeping from the gas station's door. The pale woman with sunken eyes I had seen in the flickering lights, her expression twisted in torment. Fear gripped my throat, an iron vice that made it impossible to scream. I stumbled backward, struggling for understanding, but the shadows were closing in, a swirling vortex that threatened to bowl me over. I turned again toward the gas station, the walls pulsating as if breathing with a rhythm of despair, while the beguiling figures beckoned, merging into the suffocating darkness. Come to us, they crooned softly, a haunting echo of fragility woven in their words. The officer's fingers stretched out toward me, the darkness pooling at his feet, seeking to intertwine with mine. Stay with us. I broke free from the grip of paralysis, racing towards the cruiser, my heart pounding furiously in my chest, one thought pulsing like lightning through me: I had to escape. I had to go anywhere but here. But even as I reached for the door handle, a bone-chilling realization hit. Meth cruiser was not a haven, it was another trap, another illusion wrapped in the seduction of safety. In a grotesque ballet, the figures from the gas station flooded the space around me, and the world burned with glimmers of laughter. The twisted chorus reverberated through the night, promising not just a fate worse than death, but a fate that would never allow me to leave. With every ounce of fury, I lunged back toward the gas station, desperate to reclaim my footing. But just as I turned, something compelling yanked me back, an icy grip about my wrist, pulling me toward the depths of the darkness. Next time, you won't escape, a voice resonated throughout the air, sharp and unyielding. I felt the ground beneath me churn, twisting and collapsing into an abyss, dragging me down into a maw of despair, my cries swallowed whole by the approaching shadows. And then, I understood to escape meant becoming part of the darkness, forever caught in its insidious grasp. The extremity of my choice crystallized into a moment of horrifying revelation as the silhouettes began to conjoin with mine, and time slipped away, laughter echoing cruelly in the night. Welcome back, they hissed, a sickly welcome promising endless torment, a relentless cycle from which there would be no reprieve. And then, just as darkness overwhelmed me, a brilliant flash of light erupted, blinding and shocking. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. But I felt something stir beyond it, something dark stirring back, awakening with hatred and hunger as its gaze locked onto me. The last thing I heard was the repetitious chant echoing in the void as I slowly succumbed: you shouldn't have looked. The brilliance faded, casting a deep shadow upon my thoughts, until shapes began to coagulate within. Sounds blurred into whispers, leaving only echoes of torment and urgency. I lay sprawled, limbs heavy as if crushed by an invisible weight, staring into an expanse of blackness where fear itself seemed to thrive. Gradually, clarity emerged, churning like thick fog through the remnants of my mind. I was still in the darkness, but it had shifted, molded itself into a suffocating cocoon that engulfed me completely. The air tasted of moss and mildew, tainted by decay. Disoriented, I attempted to stand, but my body felt foreign, sluggish and bruised, ensnared by unseen tendrils curling around my wrists and ankles. That in the distance, I could hear the insistent murmurs again, now layered with urgency and desperation. Join us. Stay with us. It was a siren's song, enticing yet laced with malice. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the voices to fade, but they only grew louder, a discordant symphony spiraling around me, beckoning me further into the abyss. With summoning determination, I forced myself upright. The tangible darkness pressed against my skin like a wet shroud, stifling every breath. I staggered, unsteady but desperate. My heart thudded a frantic rhythm, synchronizing with the unfolding dread pulsing through the air. As I stumbled forward, flickering memories danced at the edges of my consciousness. I grasped at them, piecing together the fragments of that cursed gas station, the wood-paneled walls, the flickering neon sign, the sharp outlines of the figures who once walked its grounds. I let out a shuddering breath, nearly choking on a gnawing sensation. What if I was lost among them? What if the shadows stayed with me, persuaded me to turn back even when I instinctively resisted? With every footfall, I could feel the cold, piercing gaze of the tenebrous silhouettes I had encountered, watching and circling, their whispers blending seamlessly together to form a cacophony taunting, tempting, and relentless. Then, thin tendrils of light broke through, illuminating what lay before me, a narrow passage, splintered wood, and unsettling graffiti scratched into the walls, demonic symbols pulsing with otherworldly energy. Tremors coursed through me, a primal fear igniting within the sickening realization that I was no longer in the realm of the living. That I stepped into the corridor, each movement slow and deliberate as I navigated through the grotesque imagery, the walls morphing with every heartbeat. Figures spun and swirled, distorting the reality around me. With every turn, faces emerged from the dark, contorted with anguish and despair, mouths opening in silent screams that never faded. They reached out for me, their spectral fingers brushing against my skin, sending icy shivers racing down my spine. That in the midst of this chaos, one face shimmered through the haze. Officer Nelson, or whatever he had become now. His vacant eyes burned with a hollow flame, yet his lips formed a whisper, desperate and low, "They won't let you go. You're one of us now." No. I cried, the word bursting from me with a primal scream. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the familiar dread that clawed at my spirit. The corridor quaked, sending shadows spiraling as if they were alive, unfurling like serpents, hungry and circling ever closer. The room began to warp, the graffiti pulsing in time with my racing heart, each beat resonating through the darkness as if calling something forth. I clawed at the memories begging for freedom. Home, the scope of sunlight glancing off the landscape, warmth against skin, what tethered me to the living world. Suddenly, I spotted a fissure splitting the far wall, a jagged tear through which I glimpsed flickers of warmth and daylight. Hope ignited within me. I launched forward, ignoring the foreboding growls thickening around me, the familiar echoing chants weaving a web of despair. But just as I reached the jagged opening, the fabric of reality lunged back, latching onto me with relentless claws. A door flung open in another realm, where shadows coalesced into a towering figure. Its eyes were voracious voids, shimmering like endless pits of sorrow, and its voice shattered the air around me. "You have stolen what is not yours to take." It bellowed, the thunderous proclamation reverberating through every grain of my being. With frantic urgency, I dug my heels into the floor and pulled, desperate to escape the dark abyss. Yet, with every inch I gained, the figure advanced, plucking lost souls from the shadows, filling them with a primal rage that unleashed chilling laughter echoing against the void. Just as I slipped closer to the crack, the weight of despair landed hard upon my shoulders. Fear gripped my heart with its icy hold. I turned to see Officer Nelson once again, his shade contorted in anguish, born of betrayal, as he whispered one final, tormented warning: "You cannot cross just yet. You haven't fulfilled the debt." And in that moment, as terror clamored louder than ever, I felt myself being yanked back, the laughter crescendoing with sinister delight, a wake of darkness rising to engulf me once more. The world began collapsing, light dimming as shadows weaved themselves into every aspect of my being. the last thing I heard before the shadows swallowed me whole was the siren's song again, echoing with a new conviction: "You belong to us now." The song lingered, wrapping around my heart like a serpentine coil as I plummeted deeper into the void. With a gasp, I was thrust back into a damp clarity where echoes morphed seamlessly into murmurs. I was no longer alone, the echoes of the lost swirled into a vortex, their faces a spectral mosaic. Some gazed at me with hopeless yearning, while others bore the wrath of the unjust, their eyes kindling with an eerie flame. Panic surged through me, propelling my legs into motion. I flailed blindly through shifting shadows, each step swallowed by the heavy darkness that clung to me like a shroud. It wasn't just the flickering figures that haunted me now, they pulsated like a heartbeat, their despair a living thing, absorbing my pulse, twisting my own dread into a summary of their own grim tales. "Help us." They begged, their whispers seeping into my thoughts, weaving into my essence. A ghastly shiver racked my spine as I resisted the urge to turn back, half tempted to join the chorus of lost souls. Fragments of the gas station leapt out from the corners of my mind, vivid but twisted inside storage rooms long sealed, beneath oil-stained floors, and tucked away in the chill of forgotten fridges. The shadows spiraled tighter, encasing me in a cocoon of despair, where the memories twisted grotesquely, a gallery of the gas station's last customers' faces torn with agony, their expressions frozen in the gradually fading glow of fluorescent lights, and then I heard a low, monstrous growl, vibrating through the air like rolling thunder. The shadows shifted, dancing, their forms undulating, morphing into shapes just beyond recognition. They surged around me, shushing the voices of torment into a cacophony of sinister laughter that resonated with malevolence. Burrowing deeper into the labyrinth, my fingers grazed the cool, clammy wall, and I noticed a door, a heavy wooden thing, marked with symbols far too familiar. It looked like the one I had seen in the gas station's back room, decorated with those same twisted symbols that had long squirmed in the periphery of my vision, suggesting the unfathomable. That I reached for the handle but hesitated, a wave of dread crashing through me. But now I no longer had the luxury of choice, an oppressive force pushed me forward. My heart thundered as I yanked the door ajar, revealing a blinding light that swelled and recoiled, breathing like a wounded beast. The stench of rotten wood and dingy oil mixed with an overpowering sweetness that burnt my nostrils as the door swung wide, tossing me across a threshold. I stumbled into a room where despair hung thick, layered over the dim light, struggling to break through the fractured panes. Piles of debris loomed like ancestors of sorrow, older than the gas station itself, their whispers melding together into a singular, poignant tale, and there, among the wreckage, sat a figure, a girl no older than 13, wild and disheveled, her wide eyes darted between me and the shadows lurking just beyond the light's reach. "You shouldn't be here," she choked out, voice barely above a whisper. "They will come for you next." Before I could respond, an echoing crack split the air, resonating with undeniable authority. The shadows converged. I stepped back, horrified as the girl raised her fingers, desperation etched into her small frame. "Leave. You have to leave before they." The shadows silenced her with a sudden force, enveloping her, their tendrils snaking around her fragile form, drawing her downward, disappearing into the pile of draped cloth and debris. I stood paralyzed as her cries shattered, morphing into muffled whimpers against a backdrop of sinister laughter. "Join us, you cannot resist," a dark voice taunted, oozing through the walls like smoke curling from a flame, tantalizingly close yet impossibly remote. Fear gripped me tight, choking out any lingering thoughts of reason. The gas station's price for entry seeped into my mind, a burden I had yet to pay. I staggered back toward the door, hoping to evade the encroaching shadows that thickened around my feet, pulling at my ankles like vicious hounds eagerly seeking prey. But just as I turned to flee, the door slammed shut with a resonating finality, sealing me within the cacophony of wails and mockery. I pounded my fists against the rich wood, the darkness rising like a tide, corrupting every inch of my resolve. "Let me out." I howled, but the laughter only grew louder, a chorus of the damned reveling in my agony, yearning to pull me into the depths of their insatiable hunger. "You must complete the cycle," they crooned, their words wrapped around me like chains, tightening, binding me to the spot, fusing my essence with the growing shadow. And then, as I screamed once more, a blinding light flickered within the depth of the darkness, a piercing beam that rippled through the encroaching shadows. It fell upon a figure behind me, a ghastly visage of the girl, her face now twisted in an expression beyond pain. "That I am sorry," she hissed, "but you're out of time." That I and that very moment, as the shadows surged forward, my very being split asunder, and within the blinking chaos saturating my vision, I saw a figure, a gigantic hand reaching through the veil of darkness, wrapping around me, dragging me down into the abyss, listening only to the final, chilling echo of the girl's voice, "You will never leave." Dread clawed at my insides, and in the flickering light, disembodied whispers filled the vastness around me, spinning webs of confusion and fear. The smothering darkness seemed to drain the air, making each breath a struggle. I felt the pulse of something ancient and restless, thrumming beneath the rotting floorboards, and it thrummed in harmony with my racing heart. Before I could comprehend the enormity of the moment, the figure, a monstrous, gnarled hand yanked me deeper into the plane of despair. I felt the cold grasp encase me like an iron vice, pulling and stretching me towards something I could barely perceive, a churning mass of shadows that writhed and pulsed like a living organism. It felt hungry, no, it felt ravenous. The brilliance of the blinding light flickered uncertainly, taking form and coalescing into grotesque apparitions of those who had come before me. Their faces, frozen in agony, twisted and warped into silent screams as the shadows encircled them like a noose. From their mouths poured vibrant trails of sorrow, mixing with the stench of decay that filled the room, crafting an atmosphere thick enough to drown me. "Join us," they echoed in unison, their once distinct cries now braided into a single haunting voice that curdled my blood. "You are meant for this. You belong to us." Desperate, I twisted and thrashed against the grip tightening around my throat. But the hand merely tightened, and the shadows curled like smoke, snaking around my limbs, guiding me toward the pulsating core of this living nightmare. I fought against despair's tendrils wrapping around my ankles, clawing my way back to reason, to the hollow promise of escape, but the sweet memory of freedom was a lie. "Help me," I managed to gasp through the tightening coil of spectral grasp. But the shadows chuckled softly, a sound like shaking bones dragging through the grave, and the very walls answered with vile whispers, punctured by my own sobs of despair. Suddenly, from the depths of the mad tableau, the shimmering figure of the girl re-emerged, her form now partially cloaked in blackness. Her eyes were pools of sorrow, seemingly filled with memories both beautiful and horrific. "Fight!" she urged, her voice a shaky echo, rebounding through the spirals of darkness. "Find the heart. You must break it." Her words illuminated a sliver of clarity. Compelled, I tore my gaze from the seething figures trapped in their own torment and searched for that heart, a pulsing ether, something that thrummed beneath the floor like a distressed animal in a trap, and then I saw it, a low pulsing glow emanating from beneath the rot-riddled floorboards, pulsating in syncopation with the laughter that surrounded me. It was a rhythmic heartbeat, throbbing with malevolence. Adrenaline surged through me, breaking the spell, and I lunged for the splintered boards, fingers raking the decaying wood aside, exposing the roiling darkness beneath. The moment my hand contacted the damp soil, it resonated desperate, writhing like a waking beast. Energy surged up my arm, rippling through every nerve, igniting a fire of instinct. I felt echoes of countless souls, their anguish coursed through me like gasoline on flames as unfinished business clawed to the surface, and a frenzied understanding bloomed within my mind. "Help us," they reiterated, raw and throaty. "You must destroy it." With newfound resolve, as if words whispered from beyond the grave fueled me onward, I seized the pulsing mass and heaved. It felt alive, thrumming against my grip, as if it sought to resist, pulling me back into the abyss. I gritted my teeth, wrestling with the shadows that gripped my body tightly. "Merciless, that I will not let you take me," I growled, my voice echoing above the wails and spectral laughter that vibrated through the air with cruel satisfaction. As I tugged upward, the shadows screamed and shrieked, and the world around me erupted in chaos. The darkness writhed violently, the spectral faces contorting in furious protest, their hollow eyes reflecting both rage and anguish. The cacophony engulfed me, each cry a reminder that I was on the precipice of a true horror, and just as the mass broke loose with an explosion of searing light, a deafening roar filled the room. Then, in the chaos, with shadows retreating as if scalded, I glanced up, locking eyes once more with the grotesque figure of the girl. She reached toward me, now visibly straining against an unseen force, her body elongating as the darkness swarmed back, as if drawn by a madness far greater than I had ever known. Finish it. She shrieked, her voice cracking under the weight of doom, as her body began to twist, folding into the shadows that grasped at her like a desperate lover refusing to let go. But then silence, as the fabric of reality swelled around us. The walls began to melt and twitch like a decadent flame licking at the edges of the universe. Flowing into darkness, my world compressed, shattering into segments as the shadows rebuilt themselves, groaning against the light that dared intrude. Finish it before it finishes you, her voice echoed, shimmering through the chaos as the ground beneath me gave way, sending me plummeting into the void, where laughter resounded louder than ever before until it cut to an agonizing silence, pregnant with horrors yet unfathomable. And as I fell, I finally grasped the unbearable truth that darkness was merely the beginning, and the real horror awaited beyond the threshold of what I would soon see. The darkness enveloped me, gripping my legs tightly as shadows formed tendrils that wrapped around my limbs. A stifling pressure pressed against my chest, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I was no longer falling, I was held aloft in a void, suspended between worlds, caught in a tightening orbit around the pulsating heart of malevolence. The world swirled chaotically, visions flickered past metadistorted scenes that melted into one another, each more nightmarish than the last. Faces twisted in fear, mouths caught in silent screams, and spectral figures lurked amidst the fog of my disorientation. I instinctively reached out, warily grasping at the void surrounding me, but it clung to my fingers in sticky, grotesque confidence, like tar seeking to entrap me. Suddenly, I felt the pull of something substantial, a wretched gravity radiating from deep within the abyss. The beauty of the glowing heart, which had seemed vibrant moments before, had dulled into a sickness, its rhythmic pulse echoing the choking laughter that echoed through the void like funeral bells. It was as if the very essence of this place had shifted, amplifying the horror, revealing its darker truths. My instinct screamed to flee, to hurl myself away from the glowing heart, but the shadows clawed at my mind with desperate urgency, whispering sweet plans woven of sorrow and deceit. "Join us," they crooned, their voices slithering through the chaos as the shadows took on a more solid form, swirling around my body in an agonizing dance that threatened to pull me into their realm. And then, with a mocking rush, they transformed into ghastly, misshapen figures, horrific parodies of what once were mere souls trapped in torment. A woman suffocated with laughter, her jaw unhinged, stretched impossibly wide with a grin that sent Mike's sanity spiraling into a chasm of dread. With a keen sharpened awareness, I began to understand that these were not merely lost souls, each of them was a fragment of the darker entity that lurked beyond my grasp. My very existence had attracted it, fueling its hunger, becoming part of the same intertwining nightmare that sought to swallow me whole. A scream tore from my throat as I felt the grip of the shadows weakening. The will that had pulled me back, the heart of despair, was fading in my grasp, the light shining brighter and brighter as the tendrils released me. In that moment of fleeting hope, I plunged my hands deeper into the pulsing core, feeling it hum against my fingertips, respecting my defiance. "Let it flow through you." The voices crooned again, seductive yet grave with foreboding. Their claws brushed against my thoughts, trying to ensnare my resolve. My heart thundered against the onslaught, their siren calls promising freedom if I would only yield, if I embraced the darkness rather than resist. In a frantic surge of energy, a primal determination lodged itself in my chest. With a sudden rage, I wrenched myself from their sweet caresses, gripping the glowing mass with all my strength. Its light enveloped my hands in searing heat, but beyond the pain lay purpose. It pulsed like a heartbeat, chaotic and unyielding, resonating with the cacophony of screams, and with each second, I could feel it relent, wresting itself from the shadow's dominion. With a final, powerful surge, I pulled the throbbing by the mass, wrenching it free of its chilling roots. An explosion of light erupted around me, banishing the shadows, forcing them back into the dark recesses of their despair. But that brilliance soon morphed, refracting into grotesque shapes, creating phantoms that bore down with devastating might. Terrifying figures emerged, gathering as if summoned, their gaunt forms twisting into horrific visages, each an embodiment of torment longing for revenge. In my triumph, I had unearthed something more sinister. The shadows now decreed their vengeance, crashing forth, a tidal wave of rage spilling into the light. They surged and shattered into sharp shards, icy and hungry, closing in on me. I could barely breathe, feeling the air thickening, the laughter returning, echoing ceaselessly, "The fool." A rasping voice hissed from the heart of the gathering storm. "You think you can escape us? You're but a vessel, a carrier of our agony." The shadows reformed into grotesque mockeries of faces I recognized, people I had loved, faces racked with pain as their forms merged into one, melding into a symphony of eyes, teeth, and screaming mouths. "Join us, become one with all of us," they beckoned in hollow, syncopated tones, capturing the essence of my terror. I felt the walls of my mind fraying under their intensity, and in that limp moment, a singular, horrifying thought echoed: a true end was not meant for me, but for something else. Perhaps, in this void, the real horror lay not in defeat but in the acceptance of that darkness within, and as the cacophony enveloped me, the face of the girl wavered momentarily, fractured by the shadows, her whispered words ghosting through the maelstrom: "You must choose, it is your only hope." And with that disquieting revelation, the world fractured again, a severe crack tearing through the darkness, sending me spiraling into uncharted depths. A choice waited just beyond the plunge. Would I accept the invitation of despair or cling blindly to the fragility of light? But the moment for choice slipped and shattered like glass, me free will feebly grasping for value as an icy hand punctured my heart, and I was no longer sure if I was meant to save myself or save them. Iawakanedno, not awakened to dark oblivion, a whisper beckoning from afar, a truth unsteady and fraying at the edges as dread hung heavily in the air, chilling my spine as the world shifted ominously beneath my feet, calling forth horrors yet unimagined. The gas station sat in desolation along a forgotten stretch of highway, but its presence felt alive in a way that belied its decrepit state. The flickering neon sign buzzed, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement, illuminating gnarly weeds that reached hungrily toward the sky. I could feel their desperation, they longed to escape this forsaken place just as much as I did. Still trembling from my encounter with the shadows, I stumbled inside, the doorbell tinkling innocently in stark contrast to the palpable dread clinging to me like a shroud. The air inside was thick with a staleness, the kind that spoke of years without fresh breaths. The dim fluorescent lights buzzed above, the sound grating against my nerves. I came to help my uncle, who had warned me about the peculiar occurrences that plagued the station. "Don't let them in," he had said with a gravity that made my skin crawl. But I initially brushed it off, thinking his tales were just his way of adding flair to the drudgery of work. A chill swept through as I took my place behind the counter, fingers tracing the weathered wood. I glanced around, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Yet an oppressive weight settled on my chest, an overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. It started with the lights flickering intermittently as if a warning, growing more erratic with every minute. I tried to focus on the tasks at hand, polishing the old gas pumps, checking the inventory, but the shadows clung to my peripheral vision, curling and weaving among the rows of candy and soda, whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. I felt it first as a slight breeze that brushed past my ear, a gentle yet sinister caress. A voice settled in my thoughts, low and sultry, promising that I belonged here, with them. I bit my lip, attempting to quiet the tempest within my mind. Around midnight, a car pulled into the station, its lights piercing through the darkness like spectral fingers. I felt a jolt of familiarity as I recognized the driver, an old friend from school, Sarah, her face ghostly pale, like a memory cast in mist. But something was profoundly off about her eyes, too wide, a vacantness that gnawed at the core of my being. "Laura, you need to come back," she whispered, stepping from her car in a disjointed, almost unnatural manner. Her voice trailed away as the wind clawed at it, unfurling it into the night. My heart raced at the clipped urgency laced with dread. "Sarah, what do you mean?" I feigned casualness, though every instinct screamed at me to retreat. The shadows leaned closer, melding into the corners of my vision, sensing the growing turmoil. "They know you're here. You shouldn't have come back, it's not safe." Her warning slipped from her lips as her figure wavered. A flicker of horror seeped into my bones as I watched her begin to unravel, the air around her swirling violently. "You have to leave before they realize," the wind howled through the station, unseen hands reaching for her, and before I could call out, shadows snatched her, pulling her back towards the car as if she were a marionette severed from its strings. "Sarah!" I screamed, racing around the counter, but all that remained was the echo of my voice. Her car stood still, its doors swung open, but she was nowhere in sight. Only a shadow remained behind, draped over the driver's seat, a looming, oppressive shape that marked her absence with paralyzing certainty. Panic clawed at my throat, fueling the restless whispers that wormed their way back into my mind. I whipped around, scanning the station, desperate for help, but only found remnants of the warmth that once lingered within its walls, a faded memory of laughter now engulfed in darkness. As the last flickers of the neon lights began to stutter and dim, a face stared back at me from the shattering shadows. It was my uncle, his countenance warped in agony, mouth moving soundlessly, trapped in an unseen prison of dread. "Get out of here." His lips formed the words in a grave unison with the chorus of howls that erupted just beyond the sliding doors. I stumbled back, the shrieks crescendoing, piercing through my skull. I felt my body instinctively follow the instinctive plea, an urge flooding me, driving my feet toward the exit, but as I turned, the door slammed shut, locking me within this cursed sanctuary. That I was ensnared by the walls, my heart thumping in time with the rising chaos beyond my reach. "Leave!" My uncle's visage demanded, his scream a desperate wail that resonated deeper than mere sound, an echo of despair cascading through the walls. Reality shifted, jagged pieces fracturing my resolve. This was no ordinary gas station, it was a crossroads, a manifestation of torment where the realms of the living and the dead would collide. With a sudden crash, both the front and back doors exploded outward, dawning an unholy chorus of voices, a flood of lost souls demanding to be heard. Dread cascaded over me like cold water, realizing that my will to flee was met with the lurking arms of horror waiting just beyond. As I staggered back, the shadows pressed forth, condensing into a multitude of horrified faces that whispered my name, drawing closer, trapping me against the wall, the fluorescent lights flickering one last time before plunging into darkness. In that silent moment, I understood the haunting truth: I was not the one who needed to leave, I was the one who was meant to stay, to become one of them. The darkness closed in around me, and as my breathing quickened, I felt the wooden counter give way beneath my hands. I was already lost, already theirs, and the realization hit me with icy clarity when I felt a warm, familiar hand grasp mine. "Laura, you have to choose." And as the figures surged and the shadows deepened, the final verdict manifested in the darkness. My choice echoed through the void like a thunderclap, reverberating against the walls, a haunting lament that lingered in the air, promising that whatever fate awaited me was yet to come. The ground trembled underfoot as an eerie silence enveloped the gas station, almost as if a collective breath held by the shadows awaited my response. The figures pressed closer, their expressions contorted with sorrow and longing, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide as they chanted my name. I could feel their fear wrapping around me, mingling with the terror already gnawing at my insides. In that moment, it became clear, the choice they offered wasn't mine to make. The warmth of the hand gripping mine transformed into an abyss, the fingers intertwining, as I felt the pulse of desperation surging through that connection, a confession laced with agony. It was the hand of someone I should have recognized, yet their face remained obscured in the perpetual twilight of the gas station's haunting. "Laura," it whispered, voice drenched in anguish. "You must remember we are not alone here." Memory flickered at the edges of my mind, but it was blurred and fractured. Empathy pulled me deeper into the folds of their shadows. Flickers of long-buried moments resurfaced in an unsettling kaleidoscope. The laughter of childhood friends hollowed, betraying their lost futures, leading me to realize these shadows carried remnants of life, tethered to this wretched place by despair. Suddenly, the shadows parted like a veil lifted by an invisible hand, revealing an ornate mirror that had gone unnoticed until now. It stood tall at the far end of the station, etched with intricate patterns depicting mournful silhouettes and screaming faces. A deep-rooted instinct compelled me toward it, an inexplicable desire to confront the reflection that shimmered with diaphanous light. As I approached, a horrifying truth unfolded within the glass, a fragmented vision of my uncle's final moments. His face appeared again, raw and pleading, drenched in sweat and despair, framed by darkness with a monstrous shape looming closer behind him. "Trust them," he gasped, the words caught somewhere between warning and coaxing, as the figure pressed down and consumed him in shadow. No. I screamed, my voice slashing through the silence, but time wrenched away my cries. The mirror pulsed, igniting with flickering images of sorrowful apparitions the very faces of those who had once roamed this station, now twisted and enshrined by their lost hopes. I caught glimpses of Sarah, my friend, even my uncle among them, their ethereal screams lost in the roar of night that a spectral wind spiraled through the station, ripping pages from worn magazines, turning them into a storm of memories, distress, and echoing pleas. As I reached forward, my fingers brushed against the cold surface. A shock coursed through me, and I was yanked into the depth of the glass. The world tore away, replaced by blinding light and the soft, echoing cries of all the souls trapped within. That I was no longer standing in the gas station but submerged in haunting, shifting memories. I witnessed the eerie events that had transpired long before my arrival: blatant neglect, desperate last gasps, promises broken, and corridors suffused with shadows that ensnared unwary travelers. Each searing image carried a weight, deeply pressing against my chest, filling me with overwhelming dread. Choose, the voices swirled around me, a cacophony of the anguished and the damned, rising in chorus, beckoning me to align with their fate. Refusing meant eternal isolation in the darkness of the gas station. Just as despair threatened to drown me, my other self flickered at the edges of my consciousness, reminding me that I had fought before. Remember, it urged, remember Gavin. Suddenly, the memories transformed. Behind them lurked a spectral figure with coal-black eyes and a chilling smile, its essence radiating hunger. It was the same force that had thrashed against my uncle's spirit, a hideous embodiment of despair, lurking in shadows, waiting to corrupt. Join us or be devoured, it hissed, a promise dripped in malice, its breath licking across my skin like ice. The veil of reality began to fray, shards of the gas station's familiarity slipping through my grasp as darkness surged, curling like smoke around me. I felt panic suffocating me anew, heart racing as the haunting cries grew louder, the faces pressing closer, yearning for acceptance or redemption. Then, abruptly, a surge of will jolted me back, anchoring me to my body. But when I opened my eyes, I was still ensconced in shadows, consumed by dread, still clinging like a second skin. Behind me, the doors to the station had cracked open with a sinister creak, revealing an expansive nothingness, a void that beckoned, promising sanctuary from the horrors that danced around me. Just as resignation threatened to cocoon my spirit, the earth quaked once more, the shadows shrieking as they converged upon me. Choose. Echoed deep within the hollows of despair and madness. I was standing at the precipice of a vast unknown, the option between the abyss behind me and the haunting whispers before me closing in around my throat. And in that harrowing glee of confrontation, the last shred of clarity told me that I wasn't the only one pulling this unpredictable thread. Just as the shadows surged in an unseen tide, I turned, battling against paralyzing dread. The specter of familiarity surged closer, a famished figure with scarred, fragile features that sent shudders racing through my veins. Its mouth opened in a silent scream, and I realized it wasn't just my life at stake, it was the predatory curse of the gas station that wanted more. Just as I surrendered to the truth clawing at my consciousness, a sharp voice pierced through. Whatever you do, don't look back. But the warning came too late. The swirling chaos surrounding me had thickened into a palpable terror, pressing against my skin as I stood at a crossroads, caught right between shadow and light. My heart hammered in a vicious rhythm, each beat resonating with the impending dread manifesting around me. Tendrils of darkness fanned out relentlessly, whispering insidious secrets. They gnawed at the fringes of my sanity, mocking my stalwart will to fight. Join us, an array of voices cried, echoing with twisted nostalgia, claiming lives long lost to the gas station's horrors. And still, I hesitated, knowing deep down that time was slipping from my grasp, the urgency of the decision coiling tighter and tighter around my mind. That I, in the midst of this chaos, the girl flickered in and out of focus, her features softening as she reached through the darkness with a spectral hand. You can't stay here, she urged, her voice strained with urgency. You must remember who you are and what they did to us. In that moment, her words wrapped around me like chains, reigniting the flicker of consciousness that pulsated through the shadows. I could feel the weight of memories pressing harder on my chest, suffocating me with sorrowful pangs. Gavin. My childhood friend. I dug in deep, grasping the image of him, bright and warm, a tether through the encroaching night. He had searched for me endlessly. Every late-night talk, every adventure that brightened our youthful lives filled me with a sense of purpose and clarity. My thoughts now turned vivid, igniting flames of resistance within me. "Freedom lies in the truth," a voice emerged, echoing through the shadows, a distant resonance from Gavin, propelling me forward. What had I forgotten? What darkness truly coiled and twisted around this gas station, echoing through time and trapping us all? With newfound urgency, I tore through the miasma of whispers, my chest expanding as I clung to the echoes of the light, the memories of warmth, laughter, and fleeting joy that refused to die in the traumatic stranglehold of the darkness. The mirror shimmered before me again, a portal flickering with the fragments of truth. A grim determination surged within me as I reached for it, touching its surface with shaky fingers. Images shot past like lightning, a montage of lost souls, anger, anguish, and betrayal, melding into a single horrific moment. I felt the weight of wrongdoing, not just mine but those who had held dominion in this gas station, a cycle of torment, an enduring curse cascading through generations. Souls trapped by their own choices, forced to feed on the despair of others, always awaiting the lamb to the slaughter, the next victim to step into their realm. "Look." The girl's desperate voice broke through the din, a shard of clarity amidst the deafening torment. "You can't let their darkness consume you. Fight. Remember who they really are." In response, the figures surged around me, seeking to drown me again, clawing for my surrender. My breaths came in sharp gasps. I wasn't merely fighting for myself, I was fighting for Gavin, Sarah, and the countless others who had succumbed to the wretched grasp of this cursed place. I summoned every ounce of strength within me, recalling our laughter, the essence of their lives shining bright despite the darkness. As if sensing the shift, the shadows recoiled momentarily, the oppressive energy waning as they sensed my resistance. But the toying hadn't ceased, it morphed into a palpable terror as the specter of the beast rose once again, its form coiling around the edges of perception. "You think you understand?" It hissed, taunting, poised to strike at my resolve. "You are one with us, forever trapped in this cycle. This station is merely the beginning." But I felt a surge of defiance rippling within. This was not merely a job or a choice, it was the curse of the gas station itself that prevented truth from reaching the light. Everything that had once been shattered morphed now into clarity. The desperation of these souls, a collection of torment roused by broken promises, crystalline memories clashing painfully against the dark tempest. With a fierce scream, I tore my consciousness past the barrier, grappling for the pulsating heart of the gas station, the very core of despair beneath it all. "I choose light. I am not your vessel." I bellowed, the words bursting forth, full of defiance. The heart pulsed wildly, the darkness swirling around me in frenetic chaos. "Join us," the voices echoed, a grating symphony of anger blended with an empty plea. But as the swirl grew louder, I could feel the light within me clashing against it, and in that moment, I understood that in recognizing the darkness, I could ignite the dormant glimmer, allowing it to grow brighter and brighter still. With newfound clarity, I turned toward the swirling maelstrom of shadows. "You are all bound by this anguish," I shouted, every fiber of my being resonating with righteousness. "But I refuse to let you claim my spirit. I will uncover your truths." An ear-splitting shriek erupted around me as the shadows recoiled. A resonant shifting ensued, each specter twisted and bubbled, as if the very essence of who they had been was clawing back to the surface, desperate for release. But amid the chaos, amidst the conflux of cold and warmth, the light shimmered, pulling me deeper through the tumult, unfurling into something divine. Memories lashed out at me, fiercely tethered voices, Sarah, my uncle, Gavin, all of them rising from the depths, reaching forth with gentle hands, filled with kindness and understanding. "You hold their weight," Sarah murmured, her voice an illuminating force. Summon the good. With determination, I threw myself toward the heart of darkness, gripping the essence of dreams and memories, and swung it around, wielding it like a lance against the shadows that beckoned. My resolve surged stronger than the darkness craving to pull me in, and with a final explosive breath, I released that living light. "Be ye free." I cried, my voice lifted above the agony. Light erupted, shattering the veil of despair. Shadows howled in fury as they fractured, revealing the figures of the lost, breaking free from their own shackles, glowing with newfound vigor, reformed and luminous that I and the cascading brilliance. I felt something shift, a sharp yet welcome finality as specters surged forward. Sarah, my uncle, Gavin, all reaching for me. They forged a bridge, binding us together, bridging the chasm of darkness that had claimed their lives. And just as quickly as it began, the gas station quaked in retribution, shadows twisting into themselves as light engulfed every corner of my reality. You've broken the cycle. Gavin shouted, a voice soaring beyond despair, a clarion call that echoed back to the gas station as its hauntings began to dissipate. But then, with a shivering darkness, I realized the truth lingered, indelibly tied to my fate. Next time, you won't forget. The echoing whispers remained, a relentless reminder that the horror had not been vanquished. My 50th whisper, a warning rippling through the void, reminding me that darkness always waits for another chance. And as the blinding light enveloped my vision, I understood, the gas station was only the doorway. I had fought to free others, but what about my own darkness? A seed planted and nurtured within me. And with that final tremor, the gas station faded from view, its wretched charm resurrecting from the very depths of shadows it once proffered, binding, creeping back, for I would carry them within me forever, safe yet not entirely free. Perhaps the most sinister truth was that the real horror lay not just in the gas station but in the shadowed corners of the soul where darkness waited patiently for my return.